I want to bring you back to the topic of climate science, because the reports are that the scientists, the IPCC, Jets and women in particular, no longer believe in a catastrophic rise in temperatures is on the cards. This is all about projections at the end of this century. They're changing them, they're winding them back, and this is allowing a lot of countries to get back in the game of industry and energy.
Remember, all the scary scenarios that you've heard, almost exclusively based on this very, very high emission scenario. It was always implausible. So remember, the scientists basically did it in order to get a wide spread of what they were looking at. That's fine if you're a scientist. But telling people something that is essentially untrue and impossible. So it assumed that we were going to be using 5 times more coal than we are today by the end of the century. Nobody expects that. That's just not, it's possibly not even geologically possible. But we kept on using it, and a lot of people were actually saying, oh, this is business as usual. This is what happens if you don't do our climate policies, which of course is just almost blackmail. It's a way of saying things are going to get really scary, and I'm going to scare you with this scenario that's implausible in order to get you to pay to do the more realistic scenario. No, we're going to do the more realistic scenario, and then the question is, should we modify that? And that's a reasonable political question, but a very different one from scaring the pants off of people. A lot of the scientists would just say, well, we just put out a wide range of scenarios. It's the fact that people have sold it as a business as usual scenario that's the real lie. That was untrue, and in that sense they're implicitly also guilty. But I think the fundamental point is it became so obvious this was wrong that now they had to take it back. And of course now they're saying, oh, it's because we did all this green stuff, which is just implausible again. No, it's because it was always implausible, and we really need to say the more realistic outcome is we're going to see almost 3 degrees warming. That's still a problem, but it's by no means the end of the world. If you bought into this whole scare campaign, and if you think this is the only and the most important issue for the world, you need to just go in all in. But it's not. First of all, we just know that it's not the end of the world. It's a problem. And spending an enormous amount of money and resources and basically focusing all your energy on trying to fix this one problem and forgetting all the others, the affordability crisis, the problem with learning or in schools or with pensions and obviously military issues in the world. You're basically ignoring all the other big problems of the world. So no, we got to go back, and I think what Tony Blair is really and crucially telling us is, in the real world, this is just not going to work out. Remember, the EU has promised to cut its carbon emissions by 55% by 2030. That's going to be very hard, and it's going to be very costly, and a lot of people are very upset. They've also promised by 2040 to reduce it by 90%. That's just going to be impossible, and it's going to be phenomenally costly if they try. So sometimes between 2030 and 2040, this is going to break, and we're going to stop. What Tony Blair is telling us is maybe it'd be better if we stopped before then and actually tried to, off-ramp this sensibly, instead of having a catastrophic breakdown and people are just going to vote in Donald Trump's or someone else to just say, we're not going to do this at all. I would prefer, and I think that would be much better for society, that we spent smartly. We think about, yes, climate change is still a problem. Let's fix it smartly with research and development, and then let's focus on all these other problems. I think the price increase is what's going to do it. When people have seen the highest electricity costs here in the UK, they're eventually saying, no, we're not going to pay for this. We're not willing to do this. There's the deindustrialization, the fact that your country is no longer producing anything because you're outsourcing everything to China. This is an unsustainable policy in the long run. Plus, it's also really, really bad for all countries because we have many other problems that we also need to fix. We need to find a cheaper, more effective way to tackle climate change. We need to get off-ramp of this. It's the end of the world and we just need to do anything. And these people are zealots. And so I think there is a necessity to say, stop this, do something smarter. And yes, I think the price increases are going to be what's doing it. And remember, I mean, we're sitting in a conference center that has a hard time keeping the air conditioning on because the electricity costs are so high. Most people are going to be very effed with that if that happens in Australia.